Hello there, it's Tom and Magnolia here, and this is chapter 72 of Gunnerkrigg Court, Perspective.
Hi there.
So for this chapter, I wanted to make it a very self-contained event, but split and seen from the different characters' perspective. So it's kind of an experimental attempt at a little event chapter.
What inspired you to write it this way?
Well, as I recall, we were watching a lot of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure at the time, and I kind of really liked how the characters are put into strange situations that require equally strange solutions to them, you know?
Right.
So I kind of wanted to manufacture a situation here that required a period where the characters had to first of all figure out exactly what's going on and then figure out how to resolve it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And straight away in the chapter, I start off with them in the situation that they've all been separated and they're in smaller groups now. And I separated the groups out so that each little group of characters has their own abilities that they can do, and then they have to start working together. And one of the things that allows them to do that is the fact that Annie and Renard are now linked kind of differently. And like I sort of vaguely mentioned that when Annie asks if Svet and Parley are linked. I guess it goes without saying that kind of implies that there's some sort of telepathic link that perhaps is not uncommon in, I guess, like the world of Gunnerkrigg or whatever. But in this case, while Svet and Parley aren't, Annie is able to communicate to Renard's. And since both of the Annies are in the same situation, the two of them are able to communicate and get the three groups able to sort of pass information between each other. It's
a good way of demonstrating the new kind of relationship that the Annies and Renard have now.
Yeah, I wanted it to be like the change in their relationship involves like a much closer link that they have, and one of the ways that manifests is that they're able to like directly communicate to each other. And so in the past they might have been able to do it by, say, Annie leaving the Blinker Stone somewhere where Renard is and then extending herself out to the Blinker Stone and talking to him that way, like we've seen in a few chapters over the course of the comic. This is kind of a replacement of that, a more instant and a lot more, I don't know, I guess you could say it's like a much higher fidelity, which is why Renard gets shocked like when the two Annies communicate with him at the same time. And it was fun to figure out a way of like representing that, you know, so it's like semi through the ether, but also implying that they're connected somehow, you know, through like the core of Renard here into the essence of Annie has.
Yeah, and Renard doesn't look like a fox in this one, so it's not like he's in the ether currently. It's like they're connected right to him.
Yeah, that's right. And they're not connected to like on a spiritual level. It's literally as they describe like being on a phone line, you know. And Renard talks a little bit more about that later on. But first of all, we see that the three groups are, first of all, Court Annie with Eglamour and Forest Annie with Svet and some like security people from the court, and then Renard is stuck somewhere with Parley. And they figure out pretty quick, thanks to Svet's expertise, you know, and training, that they are stuck in some sort of wisp nest, and based on the interactions that Annie has had with them in the past, she and the readers know that the wisps are kind of apt to mess with your mind, you know, and make things appear not as they seem. And I guess for me, writing all this was a nice change of pace, kind of getting away from the interpersonal drama between the characters and stuff, and like, you know, the larger mystery of the court and this and that. Everybody's kind of stuck in the same situation with the goal of finding the goosebone and the water, and they're all focused on this one task, you know, but some of their interpersonal relationship kind of shines through that, you know, like as we'll see later on with the Court Annie and Eglamour. There's obviously something weird going on there. She seems kind of on edge the whole time, and a little bit of discussion between Renard and Parley about the new status of the relationship, and also a little bit of light shed on Svet's personality as well, and also just some of the more like business end abilities that Eglamour and Parley might have, like this simple little directional finding magical trick that Eglamour is able to pull off.
Well, it's nice to see the characters in these little pairs, especially like we see a lot of Annie and Eglamour generally, but it's fun to see Renard and Parley and to see a little more of Svet. It must have been fun coming up with those.
Yeah, I wanted the small groups that they were put into to be kind of random, but I put them in groups that I thought would be interesting, and put a few characters together that don't really talk very often in the main course of the comic, like Renard and Parley. You know, the only reason they would ever really hang out is because Annie is hanging out with them, you know. And so here they're kind of thrust together in the same situation.
Do you think the wisps separated Parley and Svet on purpose?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, because they would understand that, and also separate Eglamour from them as well, because the three of them together are probably the strongest, and so they intentionally wanted to keep them separate from each other. And this portion of the story is just them continuing to figure things out. And I'm switching back and forth between the characters. So, and here we're catching up on Forest Annie and Svet and the security people.
I love Svet here. I thought it was such a great character detail, and it really tells you a lot of what you need to know about her and her personality.
Yeah, I think it was when she was first introduced that I mentioned that I wanted to write her to kind of be like a teen girl, but in a monster body, you know. and here we're showing that she's like very chatty and talkative, and she like really enjoys like listening to and I guess spreading gossip, you know, whether somebody wants to listen to it or not. So it was just
Why is Annie such a grump about it though?
Because she just doesn't want to hear it. She's just not interested whatsoever. Like in a way, if Svet was a human teen girl, they would just have nothing in common. You know, she's not the kind of person that Annie would really hang out with.
Annie needs to lighten up a little.
Yeah, she does. Yeah, that's basically the subtitle to the entire comic. So when it came time for Parley to actually get partnered with an Orjak, there probably would have been a bit of choice, but she picked and decided to partner with somebody who she probably would hang out with. And like I guess the relationship that they would have is similar to the relationship that Parley would have had with some friends of hers that we've seen back in the comic, like January and Cookie, I think, from many chapters ago. So Parley does get on with that personality type, whereas in this case Annie probably doesn't. But cute. luckily Annie is saved by a giant monster off in the distance, and they start to convey this information. It turns out that other groups are seeing this as well, except for Eglamour and Court Annie. But now that this new thing has popped up, they are also starting to realize that certain members of the groups aren't able to use their powers. Like Parley isn't able to teleport, Svet isn't even able to fly close physically to the creature, and so they're starting to see that there's something else going on top of the fact that there's some weird stuff is happening, you know.
This was a cool sequence. What made you think of this?
Oh, I just figured it'd be kind of an interesting transition that kind of would only really work in like dream physics, if you know what I mean.
Sure.
Where you don't really see what happens to this big creature, but you know, you're focusing on the hand, and then you realize the hand is also the creature, you know. So I just tried to think of a plausible way that a hand would physically change into a humanoid shape, you know.
I think it's a good way to show that there's definitely something going on here beyond what they can visually see.
Yeah, and while that stuff is going on, Eglamour and Court Annie are seemingly getting closer to the destination and going into what would have been the wrecked building that was destroyed by the tree. And Annie seems a little testy. This leads to them figuring out that Annie isn't even able to access her fire powers, and neither Annie is. So they're starting to figure out a little bit more, you know, the physical wards that Eglamour has on his body, they still work, and so he's able to like cast light on a stone, you know, kind of like a very simple D&D type spell. And he's methodically figuring out the parameters of the situation. And throughout this chapter, I did want Eglamour to be kind of all business, you know, like he's sort of in his element, like, you know, he's as the protector of the court, he's here dealing with a weird situation and using his skills in like an efficient and business-like way. So it was fun to actually show Eglamour doing something other than standing around looking bewildered, you know.
Well, he's a cool guy.
And we're starting to see now kind of how the perspective difference is matching up. And it was fun to draw like Parley tussling with this weird creature, you know.
I guess that's one of the first times we would see Parley really in her element too, because we've gotten glimpses of it before, but this is her doing what she would be doing as a protector, just like Eglamour does.
Sure, that's right. And she's holding her own against this weird creature. But she's also able to understand that the creature is kind of not a threat, you know, it's tapping out basically. And so Parley is, you know, ending the fight and realizing that maybe something else is going on. Even though the creature then does change into something more threatening and we see more looming creatures in the background. But right now we're hopefully the readers and the characters are starting to get a better sense of what's happening.
So back with Court Annie and Eglamour, we're starting to see kind of why Court Annie is so testy. Do you think Forest Annie would have taken it so personally like Court Annie is, or is this something that Court Annie might have been developing?
Well, what I wanted to show here is the main reason Annie's being a testy is because of all the groups right now, she is possibly the most useless one. You know, at the very least, the other Annie, the Forest Annie, she has the tracker on her, so she's able to kind of direct people. But right now, Court Annie has none of her powers. She has none of the physical strength that Eglamour does, and she is basically not able to do anything. And couple that with being useless in front of Eglamour has kind of just put her on edge, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that if the two Annies were swapped in the situation and Annie still didn't have the tracker, then yeah, she'd probably still be testy, yeah. But I kind of get the impression that Court Annie is the more prickly of the two, you know, and it's probably the result of being stuck in the court and under these like emergency situations for the past 6 months, and, you know, being estranged from the forest and not really being able to do much. I mean, she can help out with, you know, if they're like bound dogs and stuff like that, but she's probably not had much opportunity to help out at all, really.
Sure.
And that's just a little difference in their personality that I keep in mind when I'm writing them. But I think it's funny. It kind of shows Annie's still just a brat. She's
well, she's a kid.
Yeah, she's just pouting. But they move on and find what seems to be more creatures hiding, in this crevice here. And at this point, the readers, I think, are pretty much on board with understanding that these probably aren't the bad guys. And it's pretty obvious in this last panel here that it's Renard, Parley, and whatever this other creature is. And here's really when things start converging, and the creature seemingly attacks one of the court security officers. But it is revealed here that all along these security officers were the wisps that were basically controlling them all. And there's an introduction here of another character. And as she kills one of the wisps, it seems to pull back the illusion that the other characters seem to be stuck in. So once Annie realizes that her and her friends are restrained in this way, she's able to access her powers, and she just burns the crap out of everybody. And once everybody wakes up, we see Svet is eager for a fight. Egmore gets to business chopping down the wisps, and get a little glimpse here that Renard is using some of the fire powers that he mentioned earlier he kind of has access to.
So this new character is pretty cool. Do you want to tell us about that one?
Idris is one of the forest elves who seems to have been caught up in all this, and she was able to avoid being frozen in the forest with everyone else because she was near one of the entry paths into the court that some of the creatures have set up. And when I was writing her, I wanted her to seem like, well, she's very capable for a start. She was actually the one hunting the wisps, which is why the wisps were trying to get Eglamour and the other gang to basically deal with her for them. And she's been hunting them for food, because she's not really used to living in the court. But she's been hiding for the past 6 months and, getting the lay of the land. And I wanted her to seem sort of hardened, not just by the experiences, but perhaps her life experience too. She's a little bit older, and her personality is probably a bit roughened and tempered by what she's heard of the court and the time spent here. But she is ultimately a good person. She's decided to help out these people that she didn't know. She does say that she does it mainly because she recognized Annie, but we'll see in the bonus page as well when she decided to help people out. But anyway, after the introductions, I wanted to include a little panel here showing that Eglamour really wasn't trying to be condescending to Annie, and he sort of gives a nod to the fact that her powers in this situation were able to help everyone out. And then they get back to the task at hand. It seems like the tracker that Cat has made for Annie is beeping because they're near their goal, and they're able to kind of blast their way to it.
Do you have fun drawing Annie using her fire powers? Because it looks like a lot of fun to draw.
Oh, sure, yeah. It's as fun as when I get to draw her in the ether, or draw any of the weird sort of magical stuff going on. I do enjoy showing Annie using her powers like that. It's fun. And so they're able to find the goosebone, but the next obstacle that pops up is the fact that most of the interior part of the tree is what Idris calls ironwood, and there's just no way that they're cutting through it right now. So unfortunately, that is about as far as they're able to go in this quest. They still have to locate the lake water, but it also seems that they're going to have to go and talk to Loop. And here we have the bonus page that I mentioned. I just wanted to show real quick the situation that Idra was in, getting used to the court, chopping off her hair because she didn't want it in the way all the time, and then ultimately realizing that these people that she doesn't know, but she kind of knows, she knows who Annie is, are basically headed into danger, so it's just showing the situation where she elects to jump in and help him.
Do you think eating the wisp would probably be more healthy than eating a bunch of vending machine food anyway?
It probably would have been, yeah. But I wanted to show that she just had no idea what this stuff was, because she probably couldn't smell it or read the words or understand what she would be looking at. So she was basically just sticking with what she knew, which was eating creatures.
Well, I always like when you use this cute little style. It works really well.
Yeah, it's pretty good for the bonus pages too. But that is that, so come back again for chapter 73, The Goosebone.
See ya!